Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Imran here, Why Companies Lose Talent. I am so excited to talk to you today, have the conversation with Howie, Executive Vice President at Publicis, a former friend of mine and colleague from Oracle. He's got a range of experience all the way from Citi to Oracle to his role at Publicis. He talks about real practical things about what to look for when you hire, how to grow in your current role, what fulfillment means. So excited to break down this episode. Welcome to the podcast, Howie. It's so awesome to have you here.
What's up, brother? It's great to see you, Imran. Great to see you, Nick. Let's have a great conversation and drop some knowledge here.
Yeah, perfect. Let's jump right into it. We've known each other for years, and I'm super blessed for it. You've hired prolifically across Conductor, Citi, Oracle, now at Publicis. What stands out to you on hires that stick versus hires that leave?
Yeah, it's a great question, and when I think about my career arc, like having worked with someone like yourself back in our Oracle days, you learn so much. So I'm going to regurgitate some things that I learned from some incredible leaders that I've worked with over time. Something I learned from you, sitting virtually across from you in this podcast, is that how you dress kind of introduces yourself before you walk into the room. So it's awesome to try to keep up with you here from an outfit standpoint. I'm failing at it.
I think you're rocking it. You got a pocket square going, and
that's right. I got the fancy napkin. Which for folks in the room says, like, this guy's either fancy or he probably sneezes a lot. So,
or he's from New York. That's it. It's what
that's what it could be, or it could be the scent of bagels, cream cheese, and everything else that I'm going to emanate. But so let's talk about talent. Let's talk about the things that lead some of the best folks to stay at an organization overall, right? And there was a framework that I heard, and I've taken it from one of the leaders I used to work with. So his name's Rich Fleck. I think, Imran, you remember Rich quite well. So senior executive at Oracle and Merkle, which is part of Dentsu. And what he said was everyone should always be evaluating their decision to stay in an organization based on a few things. The first being, am I fairly compensated? And that's a horizontal. That must be true. There should be some fair compensation. Now, what's also true at the same time is there's always going to be more money out there at any point. Some folks, it just is a matter of answering the phone. Some you're going to make a few calls. Some you've got to hunt for that next opportunity. But there's always more out there. There's at least 10% more for everybody out there at any given point. It's all about the trade-offs. So first question, am I fairly compensated? That being true, you need to think about, is the work itself interesting? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? We're at a point in time where you don't have to be that apprentice, or just because you're apprenticing for that cobbler. Like, you have a choice in what you can do. Is that work really interesting for you? It could be interesting. Are you good at it? That's the next layer of this hierarchy. So are you good at the work? The next goes into, do I like my coworkers? Do I trust my coworkers? Do I trust my manager? That's very important. And ultimately, in this role, am I learning and am I growing? So everyone should be asking themselves those questions all the time. Now, when you think about, okay, cool. So I'm checking all those boxes. This is the place I want to be at least right now. I want to stay. How do you go from just being there to thriving? And there's folks who thrive throughout the arc of their career, like yourself, like Nick, like so many others. So there's a few dimensions there from my perspective. Obviously, going above and beyond, which sounds great. What does that mean, right? What does going above and beyond truly mean? Is it just being the first one in, last one out? Not really. You could be working hard, but are you working smart? It's really every dimension for how you can help out and ultimately be a net positive. So if you're in a conversation with somebody, sending them an article that you found that's relevant to that conversation, connecting folks with others who might have subject matter expertise on that particular subject. Folks are always raising their hands for a project, reaching out to get time with folks, not just executives where it's somebody who can help you, but also folks who are horizontal to you, technically below you in any kind of hierarchy from a title standpoint, because they presented something really interesting and you want to learn more so you can help them out. Asking questions, being curious, being seen, those are all elements that leave somebody to thrive in the grand scheme of things. You think about some of the traits of these individuals that thrive. They're folks who have immense grit, right? They're not going to quit easily. They've been through some challenges and they know how to navigate tough times, and they always know good times are one day away. You're one day closer to the next great day, great cycle. Progress isn't a straight line, but also one day closer to that next surprise. So do they have the grit to go through that and face those challenges? Are they naturally curious? Do they see technology like AI and say, oh shit, I'm going to go run and hide? Or are they curious? Are they ones that, to quote Peter Drucker, believe that the best way to predict the future is to create it, right? Are they builders? Are they constantly helping? And helping comes from a place where there's no scoreboard. It's not transactional. I'm not going to help just because someone has helped me with these two things. I'm going to help them with these two things. Folks always overestimate their own individual contributions and always underestimate the contributions that they get from others. So when you think about all of those traits, that's really what it means to go above and beyond. So once you decide you're going to stay somewhere, it's doing these things and doing them consistently, really building that habit and that muscle. That's what leads folks to thrive in any organization. And it goes beyond organizations and business as well. I think these are all attributes that you can bring to your day-to-day lives, relationships, friendships, everything that's going to really help somebody just thrive overall, being that net positive in all regards.
Can I jump in on that, Howie?
Yeah,
please.
It's top of mind, actually, because just yesterday I delivered a workshop on grit and being gritty for senior leaders in pharmaceutical sector. And they, as is true in many big corporate kind of organizational structures, they're going through a lot of change. And change is the constant in that line of work, especially for this particular function within the business. And so I was teaching them the science of grit and like what is grit and what it means. So I'm glad you brought that up. And what I help them to understand is, if we all have our goals and we all have our values, this research from the psychologist Angela Duckworth, who's sort of the mastermind behind grit, she talks about goals and goal hierarchies. So, and the way that you sort of visualize it is at the very top, we have what she calls our absolute concern, which is like the value. And no matter what change is happening around you, AI, anything else, that stays the same because it's enduring for 10, 20, 30 plus years. Whereas all the stuff on the bottom of that hierarchy, those tasks that kind of come in and out every day or multiple times a day, those things will change. So what I'm trying to teach these leaders is like, look, it's okay that bottom layer is going to be moving and constantly in flux and changing, so long as you are constantly oriented to that. We can call it like a North Star is often how we refer to it. So I'm just curious if that sort of rings any bells in your head of like how you think about it, or how people in general, when they stay at organizations, if they ask themselves, what is my North Star? Do you think that's a question people ask themselves?
Is it a question they do ask? Not everyone. Is it a question they should ask?
Yeah.
Different question to your question, right? But yeah, absolutely, right? What is your North Star? Thinking about, where do you want to be in the next 20 years? Where do you want to be in the next 30 years? Sure, the answer is easy. Of course, want to be on the beach with a colada and little mini umbrellas, because if it rains, you don't want that portion of your drink to get wet, right? But truly, like, where do you envision yourself? Then you can break that time period, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that North Star, really what you're trying to achieve, and you break it out into what are digestible chunks, because I think folks will always completely overestimate what they can accomplish in the next month, what they can accomplish in the next 3 months, but really underestimate what they can accomplish over a much longer story arc. So if you break down that 20-year time period into not just years, but then 3-month chunks, and you see that 3 months might be 1% of that whole time, what have you done over that 3-month period, that 2-month period, that 4-month period to get toward that larger goal? And you're getting those incremental gains. It is amazing how you can very quickly accomplish what is your North Star much earlier. So the other dimension I'll add to it is not just having that North Star, but making sure it really is that truly stretch goal, because our abilities will always impress. We're truly focused and we're really activating all of our superpowers toward it, and you have a plan to achieve it. You might get your goal much, much sooner than you thought, which may mean that stretch goal wasn't as much of a stretch as it should have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I suspect it's probably the case that there's so many different organizations, and I don't want to like paint any broad brushstrokes, right? But if I will for a second, there's some organizations where they'll create the environment and they'll facilitate things so that you can do what you just said, so that an employee, a person there can do exactly what you just stated. And then that just makes it like those 5 things you listed, right? It makes it interesting. It makes them good at their work. They have that trust. When we look at the opposite, when there's organizations or leaders who aren't creating that environment for employees, like what are they doing? What are they missing? Have you come across or heard the not so good stories of, and obviously the ramifications of that being people will leave?
It doesn't feel like it at the time, but one of the best gifts you can have, and this will come across a little toxic to listeners, because you don't want to look for this or go out of your way. But one of the best gifts you can ultimately get in the grand scheme of things is having a bad manager, a terrible manager, a terrible leader. There's a lot of reasons why. One, if you are a leader or aspire to be a leader yourself, it really helps you identify what behaviors you should model or want to do the opposite of. 2, it lets you appreciate great leaders, put more of a value on getting to work with the Nicks and the Imrans of the world. Knowing the value of having a manager who is completely supportive, who's always giving you the stage, the credit, the help that you need, also getting out of your way when you need to be empowered. That manager, that leader, those are just tremendous factors in helping determine if an employee is going to stay with an organization or leave that organization, or stay and really be all in, giving their everything that they have, those finite hours when they are at work. So the manager, she or he will have a tremendous impact there. I can tell you, having just at one point an awful manager was such a gift, because I knew what it was like to have somebody who was constantly taking credit, blaming, micromanaging, and it really put things in incredible perspective for me. So it's one of those reasons why that manager is such a huge factor in if you're staying in an organization, if you're thriving in an organization, and really creating the model of the manager that you want to be based on your experience when you were more junior in your career, or the manager you wish you had, I should say.
Yeah, Howie, my story and my time at Oracle, but I think it was the 3rd GVP, going from Ed to Tony, Nadeline, and then the last one that changed my entire relationship with that organization, right? I think I was pretty fond of saying I bleed Oracle, right, instead of bleeding red, and very committed to it. I saw my career journey there and would see the growth there. And it's so fascinating how a direct leader can have so much impact into how you associate with a brand. And you brought up Rich, and, I remember Rich's quadrant and almost went to go work for him again at Bloomberg, and always sort of followed people where they went. And I thought the one, aspect of his quadrant that always was the most valuable to me, like even outside of comp, and was the learning outcomes, and like, how much am I going to learn by going and doing that? In fact, Hatchproof it scared the living shits out of me. All right. And I said, I got to go do it because it's the scariest thing I could go do. It's going to have the most learning outcome. What warning signs can people look for out there about the manager that they should think about? Like, hey, this is a reason to maybe think about something else, or, to try to change behavior. Does that even work? I'd love to get Nick's perspective on that, of managing upwards. And I think everybody here on this call has done a good job of that, to have gotten some level of growth. And I do think it's a big part of success, especially in larger organizations, being able to manage upwards. But what are your thoughts on that?
To me or Howie? I'll hear from Howie first, and I'll
both.
Sure. Sorry. I know Nick's gonna have a much better answer, so I was to defer a bit there. Silence can be incredibly powerful. So, let's take it down to the interview process, because sometimes you can know right out of the gate, right, if this person who may be your hiring manager is the right fit. So many folks are laser focused on trying to get that particular job, and when you're sitting across from your potential hiring manager, a lot of folks need to consider, is this not just the right fit for me from an organization, a role standpoint, but is this the right manager for me? Is this somebody who really aligns with what I'm trying to do, aligns with my values? Is this someone that seems like they will be very supportive? Is this somebody that I can envision myself working with and working for over the next 10 years, assuming that role is going to have that hierarchy for that long? And ultimately deciding, is this the right role for me? So as much as you were being interviewed for a particular role, making sure that you're also interviewing those folks and making sure that it's a right fit for you as well. Because ultimately, our time is the most valuable resource we have. It is finite. One of those beautiful mysteries and gifts. We don't know how much we have, and we spend such a large share of that finite time at work that we want to make sure that we're in a place where we're going to be producing great output. It's work that's going to be interesting and stuff that we're good at, but ultimately, we're working with people that we trust, people that are helping us grow, and there's nothing more important than that manager. So making sure you're seeing during the interview process, is this the right manager for you, or even you're transferring within an organization, trying to get as much information as possible about a potential leader if you're going to be transferring to division. Those are all really critical factors in making sure that you're set up for success. And if you're leading people as well, making sure that your people underneath you as well at that time are also well structured for success. Mm-hmm. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself, Howie. I think, and it's a really a first principle of Hatch Proof. And I remember Imran and I were having this conversation like a couple of years ago when we were dreaming up this idea, where we believed that, for whatever set of reasons, modern organizations and kind of corporate America decided that it was going to be a one-way relationship, where the organization and the employer and the people leader and manager would be the ones to dictate the rules. And here's how it's going to go. And that was true for how they hired, or how they continue to hire, how they continue to manage, how they coach, how they perform, everything. So for us, as I said, a first principles in how we design product and product experience is that what we do in the world of work is inherently psychologically relational. It is a relational exercise that we do. Just like you have a relationship with your spouse, with your friend, with your kids, it's a two-way street. It's two humans. And yes, there's two sides to that relationship, and those differ, of course. But we have to remember that it is, at the end of the day, a relationship. So for example, Imran and I know this, let's take performance as one use case or context. The traditional way of doing a performance is very much the employer or the manager saying, I'm here to tell you, dear employee, what you're doing good at, but more importantly, what you're not doing well at and what you're doing poorly at, as opposed to creating a dialogue between the two parties and really prioritizing this aspect of, it's a relationship, let's figure it out together. And out of that comes transparency, objectivity, perceived fairness. And then once you have those things, we know, the research shows, the flywheel kicks in. So then the employee feels that it is transparent. They feel supported. They feel like their growth is being enabled at this company, at this organization. And in turn, downstream, the consequences that you want to see is that that person stays and they feel like, they feel like their interests are being taken care of, like any relationship that we have. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I want to kind of piggyback on that performance piece. How you manage hundreds of people. How and what do you look for growing these individuals? How does somebody get promoted inside the org these days? And Do you think that's going to change in the future, or do you think it's the tried tested in the past, or just come in, work hard, hit the goals? What does that look like? It kind of fits into this whole idea of like fulfillment, right? Like we find it so important to have growth as individuals. Do you think that definition is going to change and evolve as work evolves?
So it's a really great question, right? And if you were to ask me this at the very start of my career journey, having no idea I'd be where I am now, back in the day, I would have thought that the most important things to, let's say, retain the best folks would be all about promotion and making sure that folks are getting paid more. But ultimately, if you game this out over a long story arc, if people are always looking for promotion as the one factor that's going to keep them at a particular organization, eventually you run out of CEO roles. There's only so many roles in that seats, and also it is not a job that folks, in many cases, will enjoy. It sounds great when you're making when the comp's a little bit better, the roles the responsibility is greater, but there's a whole lot of pressure that comes along with that. Two really tough decisions that can impact folks that you have to make, and folks quickly realize, wow, that was not as fun as I thought it was when you start getting some tastes of that. So when you think about that's just one perspective on goal of promotion, but if you have folks that are always that net positive, always adding a lot more than they're taking, always looking out for how they can help out individuals, how they can help out other teams, help out if they have clients, help out their clients, and truly going above and beyond with relentless curiosity, that ability to build and create and try to be that change agent, even if you've been in an organization for 10, 20 years, looking to facilitate and be that catalyst for changes, are all things that go into that bucket of promotion, really doing the job that is at that level that's higher, even multiple levels higher. If you're already dressing the part, doing that work, holding yourself that way, holding yourself personally accountable to that role, it's a no-brainer when that role opens up that you're going to get that role, because you kind of set that, you've set yourself really up for success in that case. It's also important to have those open conversations about what your goals are, near, mid, and long term with your manager. That's what you're looking for, and your manager's manager as well, if appropriate in that organization. So they're also building and really investing in your success as well, because ultimately, the importance of retaining your best employees matters more than anything. Once you've established yourself as that within an organization, a lot of folks can be well invested in your success.
Yeah, really well said. Man, we might need to get Rich on here, because I keep now thinking about all these things that Rich said to me, and I didn't realize maybe how much of an impact. But one of the things he always said to me is that he loved that I embodied the role before I even asked for the role, and just kind of stepping into it. That's a hard concept, and I know you do a lot of guest lecturing, and you bestow a lot of wisdom in future generations, and we thank you for that. But do all generations see it this way of do the work? And, my dad was very much like, just put your head down, work hard, outwork everybody. And that was his generation of how you get promoted. Does it still fit in sort of the generational changes that we see from Gen Zs and millennials out there? What are you seeing across the student body in terms of how they think about growth?
Yeah, it's interesting. So to your point, I guest lecture a lot at universities here in New York, like NYU, Baruch, Yeshiva, St. John's. I also have my own class at St. John's, so I teach analytics in their graduate program in integrated communication. So I do have exposure to lots of folks of many ages in these programs, but definitely a lot of Gen Z folks, and expectations are pretty different when you think about that population. So expectations are in many ways I think, distorted by social media. Shocker to say that, on a podcast, but everything from making it appear so easy to get rich from side hustles or cryptocurrencies, or at the time NFTs, or whatever that big collectible that's popping at that given time is, to day in the life videos that really set somebody up for a completely distorted view of what actual work tends to be. So you have a day in the life video of somebody at Meta or somebody at Google where they're taking their hoverboard in. I'm going to go a little dramatic on this. They're rolling up. They're going to get their coffee. Then it's time for their massage. They might check their email, and then it's time to go to the game room, and they go hang out with their friends over at lunch, and that's all catered. And then it's time they're going to do this lecture, and they'll check their email again, or their Slack or their Teams, and do a few quick things, but then you have the group Pilates session, and after that, and I go on, then they're going to pick up dinner and take it home for whatever it is, that concert they've got that night. And you see these expectations.
You don't have Pilates. You don't have group Pilates offered. It's really the best. No, I'm kidding.
Totally. We do a lot of things here to create a great culture for our folks, but group Pilates, I think I might horrify some folks if we have all these layers, and it definitely create more voluntary attrition than I would like here. So the view is a little distorted, and I think there's a shock factor when folks get into the office, especially when they think work from home is normalized, and it's great. There's a balance of the force between working physically in an office, working from home, and the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going to come back in. There will always be some kind of a balance, but particularly early in a career, it's important that you're physically there, you're being seen. I work in CRM. I have not figured out how to email a handshake, and you truly cannot email a handshake. Being in person, learning from others there, building authentic relationships, and really, when you think about it, you can't really truly build a deep, authentic relationship over a screen. So much of our communication is nonverbal. So being there is critically important. And a lot of folks have the expectation they'll work remote. It's going to be quote unquote easy. They should have an incredible quality of life. We don't almost set folks up for the hardships that are out there. We also set the expectation that side hustles are common everywhere, and folks may not think that their main job is really their side hustle, their primary hustle. It should be the focus where they put almost all of their energy. So I think folks get a distorted view because in social media, everyone seems like they're on a private jet. There aren't that many private jets, truly. Everyone has this incredible work-life balance. Everyone is always traveling and doing all these things. But why are you the one who's going to university, going to grad school? Why are you the one who's got like 4 roommates and in this environment? Like, what haven't you figured out? Because it doesn't reflect the reality. And the more time folks are spending on these apps, I'm not saying to stop, but it creates distorted view of where individuals are relative to their peers and what even things like work should be earlier on. So I think that impacts future generations a little more than I would say folks who are a little more seasoned, like yourself, Imran, Nick, myself, and others of our generation, quote unquote.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like you said, the genie's out of the bottle. It's striking this balance between work from home and remote, hybrid, return to office, whatever the case may be. When I'm curious, taking that, when it comes to a hiring context, Imran and I think a lot about this, is like what we are essentially doing when we're trying to make a hiring decision is we're picking up, different clues. And traditionally, those clues came in the form of a resume or a cover letter, a CV. And then as they advanced through the stages, it would be, some sort of conversation. We now know that AI, because of AI and these large language models, these younger generations in particular are figuring out, I can hack, I can game the system. I can use AI to create a cover letter that is very, kind of tailored to this role, this position, this company. I can do it to create my resume. And there's even now, I saw recently this video of somebody's on the interview virtual, but as they get the question, they give it to the AI and the AI is giving them the answer real time cool. But at the same time, what purpose, what are we really doing here? Right. I'm not sure if you have an opinion on what is the role of AI versus the human to human, that, you said the handshake, what is the handshake going away in the context of a hiring context and decision in particular? What do we do as leaders to maintain that level of kind of humanity?
I love that. So it's a great question. I've seen those videos where AI is giving such polished and eloquent answers, and I'm from Queens, New York. Like, I am not going to give nearly as eloquent an answer as AI is, and I think my new employer, if I did that, would see very quickly on day 2 and day 3 that I am not that individual that they interviewed. They should have been hiring ChatGPT, and in that case, should they have even hired me when they could have used AI instead? That's another question, right? But let's talk about the interview process itself, and how do you stand out? And I think so many candidates are focused on getting the perfect answer, or trying to convince that interviewer across the table, across the screen, that they are the right ones for that job, and trying to truly qualify themselves. And one thing I think that needs to be understood is you're already qualified. Your resume has went through an incredibly in-depth screening process at almost every organization. So you're already qualified for the role, and they're probably interviewing a number of different candidates and trying to see why they should hire you versus the others in that pool of other folks that are also highly qualified for that role. So qualification, taking that out of the picture, that interviewer is thinking, can she rely on you? Are you somebody that's going to be a great addition to the team overall, make the team better? Are you somebody that is going to really go above and beyond in all dimensions? And when you're thinking about how you can really differentiate yourself, one, and we talked about already, is being there in person. If others are taking that remote and you're physically there, that can give you a better sense if it's the right role for you as you're picking up on cues, and vice versa. They can really see if you're the right candidate for that particular role. If you've really done your research on the company, you're asking great questions, you've done your research about the interviewer herself, some things that she's written about, places that she's talked, or companies that she's been at, and you're able to really cater things toward that individual. If you're able to just have some candor about what your weaknesses truly might be, or some skills that are coming up that are required in this particular role you may not have as well. You can say, look, I can learn that pretty quick, but candidly, I haven't done that as much as others. Here's some other relevant experience that I do have. It almost adds credibility to the skills that you do have and are proven, because you're admitting some of those weaknesses there, which may not be a standard best practice in interviewing, but I think it really adds credibility to any candidate to admit those things, showing those growth areas. And a couple other factors, like one, if you don't get that role, you thought it was perfect, it's not personal. You don't know if there's an internal candidate who got it. You don't know what other factors are at play. You can only control your controllables and play the hand that you're dealt. And ultimately, you have to remember, even if you got that, you applied, it looked great on paper, you got the offer, but something just doesn't feel right about it, you don't have to take it too. So that's something that's key for interviewers to remember as well. It could be that fancy company with that fancy title, or whatever those things that feel great but doesn't feel like the right role for you. Probably listen. There's a reason you may want to stay where you are right now, or find the right fit. You don't have to take everything that's offered to you, especially if you have the luxury to wait a little bit longer, and understand that not everyone's in a position to wait at any point, and may just have to take what is offered.
Yeah, totally. Well, I kept you over time. We really, really appreciate your wisdom and insights. It's been really great to talk to you. We have one final question that we ask all guests as a final question, and the rule is you can only say yes or no. Okay. And the question is, do you say please and thanks when you use your AI of choice?
Absolutely.
Okay. With that, Howie, thank you. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Howie.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for hanging out. As we mentioned, time is finite. I cannot think of a better way to spend time than hanging out with the both of you. So thank you so much. I learned a ton here, and looking forward to talking with you soon. Bye.
Appreciate you.